Welcome to the Agave and Lime Show. I'm Ginger.
And I'm Salt.
And this is part 3 of me telling Salt the entire plot of the Kdrama Lovely Runner. Parts 1 and 2 will be linked down below. And I'm going to do a quick recap, but that's not enough to know what actually happened so far. So please go watch the previous episodes first. So let's dive right in. Our main character, Sol, has been paralyzed by an accident and thinking of ending her life when she gets a call from a man on the radio who gives her hope to live again. That man, Ryu Sun Jae, is part of a newly debuted K-pop group called Eclipse, and Sol becomes one of their very first fans. Nearly 13 years later, Ryu Sun Jae dies, and Sol finds a way to go back in time to save him. She managed to get close to him, fell in love with him, and then realized he's been in love with her since they were in high school. She has a limited amount of time in the past, and she realizes that she can go to the past a total of 3 times. A second time in the past, Sol's goal is to stop the accident that paralyzed her from happening. But she's starting to realize that there may be more to the accident that she erased from her memories. In part 2, we ended with her having rejected Ryu Sun Jae because she'll go back to the future soon and it wouldn't be fair to him to accept his feelings. And she's waiting to get past September 1st, intact. September 1st, 2008, that's the date of her accident. She originally plans to stay inside the house no matter what, but knowing that Sun Jae is waiting for her, she heads out. Now let's rewind a little and look at the original timeline. In the original timeline, Sol is asleep on the bus and Sun Jae is also on the bus behind her. It's their stop, but she's still asleep. He tries to wake her up, but the bus starts moving before he can, so he decides to just stay on the bus with her. His friend calls him up and he tells him, why don't you just pretend like you missed your stop too, and then both of you can come back together in a taxi and have a way to bond. Sun Jae sees they've gotten really far and he decides to wake her up, presses the stop button, and he gets up, but accidentally knocks over his bag and his stuff is all over the floor. He bends down, he's picking everything up, and the bus stops because he pressed the button earlier, but he's still focused on picking up his stuff and he doesn't notice. But Sol feels the bus jerk to a stop and actually wakes up and quickly gets off when she realizes that she doesn't recognize where she is. By the time Sun Jae looks up, the bus doors are closing and Sol is nowhere to be found. Sun Jae tries to convince the bus driver to let him off, but that's not allowed. So he has to wait for the next stop, which isn't too far away. Now Sol's alone at this isolated and eerie place. It's the same place where she fought the old man on the bridge earlier and fell in the water. It starts raining and she considers asking her mom to pick her up when she sees a taxi drive by. She runs up to it, opens the back door, and sees this giant pile of rope under the seat and a box cutter.
A rope and a box cutter.
Yeah.
Okay.
She sees it and she has the natural reaction of, I'm looking at a serial killer's toolkit, gets scared, pretends like her mom said she's picking her up and refuses to get in the taxi and just walks away. At the same time, Sun Jae got off the bus at the next stop and ran all the way back. He's looking around for Sol, but he doesn't see her anywhere. It's raining really heavily, so of course he assumes that she probably already left in a taxi. That's when Sol opens her eyes and she's lying in the backseat of a car. Her hands are tied and she looks up, notices there's a guy in the driver's seat.
So it's the same guy from the other timeline?
Yeah, it's the taxi guy.
Okay.
It's the taxi driver that she didn't get into the car. Like, it's the driver of the taxi that she didn't get into earlier because she saw the serial killer toolkit 101 in the backseat.
Got it.
So he turns around, she recognizes him, and she realizes it's the same guy from earlier, right? And she pretends to be unconscious. The taxi stops in the middle of the woods, and there's like a little shed nearby, and the taxi driver goes in. Sol's still in the backseat. He assumes she's unconscious, so he just leaves her there. She opens her eyes, gets up, uses the box cutter that was on the floor earlier, and cuts her ropes off. She manages to escape the car and runs away when the taxi driver comes out of the shed and sees that she's gone. Sol is running through the woods. The taxi is chasing her when she finally makes it back near the bridge, and Sun Jae is still in the area. He hasn't left yet. This is around like 11 p.m. at night or something. And all this happens pretty quickly because she escapes pretty soon. So Sun Jae is still there. He hasn't found a way to leave because the buses have stopped running. And he didn't find a taxi because it's raining too. Sun Jae sees her running away from the taxi. She runs onto the bridge with it still behind her. And he's running towards her from the opposite side of the bridge. Before he can reach her though, the car closes the distance and crashes into her. Sol flies through the air and lands in the water under the bridge.
So Sun Jae has seen all of this. He's the one who saved her the first time.
Yeah.
Got it.
This is the original timeline, right? So this is what actually happened that caused her to become paralyzed. The taxi drives right past Sun Jae after hitting Sol, and he sees his face. He sees the man's face. And then he dives into the water and saves. He carries her out of the water. She has a giant head wound, and he's trying to wake her up when the taxi driver comes back and attacks Sun Jae. They fight each other. Sun Jae is about to lose when the cops show up and they grab the man before he can escape. They haven't really mentioned it clearly, but I think Sanjay called the cops, maybe? I don't know. Or they saw someone getting into an accident, or they were on patrol nearby.
So either way, this man's caught.
This man's caught and he goes to prison. So that's what happened in the original timeline. So now it's September 1st, 2008 again, after Imsol has returned to the past. Imsol's brother comes home to find her missing. Sanjay heads back home after Imsol failed to show up at the playground where he was waiting for her. And he sees the yellow umbrella lying open in the middle of the street.
That's where we ended the previous episode.
Yeah, that's where we ended the previous episode. Imsol's nowhere to be found. He thinks something's weird. Sanjay thinks there's something off about this situation, goes to her house to find her. Her brother opens the door and tells Sanjay that she isn't home, which is weird because apparently she kept telling her brother that she couldn't leave the house today. And Sanjay asks him, what do you mean? Imsol has been telling her brother for days that she can't go out on September 1st, specifically the date. And she even told him to tie her down if she tried to go anywhere near the reservoir. That's when Sanjay remembers that when he saved her before, when she fell off the bridge fighting with the old man for her cell phone, it was at the reservoir. And after he saved her, she told him that she had a vague flashback to her accident, the one that she told him happened 15 years ago, and this might be where it happened. So Sanjay remembers that and asks her brother if that reservoir was where she got into a car accident. And her brother's like, what car accident? They're both confused about why she would say that when she's never been in an accident, when her brother wonders out loud, did she have a dream about getting into an accident or something? I wonder why she said that. Sanjay remembers something else then. Remember when she was trying to stop him from participating in the swim competition and she couldn't tell him the truth because time kept stopping? So she told him that she had a dream that felt real about how he would be injured, and that's why she's trying to stop him. He remembers her saying that, and he realizes maybe this is a similar situation. And I think he probably has a hunch by now that things are weird, especially because he did end up injuring his shoulder almost immediately after. So we finally see Imsol again, and she is in the backseat of the taxi, just like in the original timeline. The taxi stopped in front of the little shed in the woods, and the guy is preparing himself inside. Imsol is still tied up. Honestly, that guy looks like he's putting on his murder suit. He's wearing a butcher's outfit with the apron and the arm covers, and picks up a wrench, and he's got his knives and tools and all that on the side. I mean, this should be obvious, but remember how I mentioned they found a dead body hidden in the reservoir? And when Imsol goes back to get her wallet from the police station, they discover a body near the reservoir. It's obviously this guy.
So it all ties up, probably.
Yeah. Imsol wakes up, realizes the guy is gone, takes her chance to escape again. She uses the same box cutter to get free from the ropes, but before she leaves the car, she pauses and takes his car key. This is how you do smart regression. This is how you actually change the future. Sanjay has once again appeared in a taxi. Imso is running through the woods when another car starts chasing her. It's a little truck, the small ones that they use for deliveries and stuff throughout the city. Imsol sees the little truck coming and hides in the woods off the road. And Sanjay has gotten off the taxi at the bridge, but he doesn't see anyone nearby, and he goes to the police station, which is right next to the reservoir. But he isn't sure of anything at this point. It's just a hunch. He just thinks she might be here. He hasn't actually seen her. And the cops can't do anything when he can't tell them anything concrete. Sanjay's about to leave the police station when the cop is like, is today September 1st? The student who came to get her wallet before also said something might happen today. Maybe the murder is bringing out all of the loonies. And now Sanjay is sure of his hunch because he realizes that was Imsol, the girl who came to get her wallet, and said September 1st. So Imsol is still trying to get away from this truck that's following her. And Sanjay is looking for her in the area when he sees her from a distance. She's running away from the truck. He's running towards her, but Imsol has reached her limit. She's been running for a really long time, and her legs just give out. She collapses right in the middle of the road with the truck heading toward her. Another car gets in the way, and Sanjay finally reaches her, and the truck just drives past them, acting like it had nothing to do with anything. Imsol successfully got away from the guy because she was rescued. Sanjay reached, but before she can even sigh in relief, the watch flashes.
And she's back.
Yeah, she's back in her time, in 2023, I guess. So Imsol opens her eyes, and she's actually standing in a group of women. Everyone, including herself, is dressed in Joseon Dynasty clothes, which is from a long time ago, like ancient period. Ancient Korea, okay? She's standing among a group of court ladies attending to a man who looks like the king, judging by his wardrobe. And Imsol looks around and immediately screams, "No!" because she thinks she went back in time all the way to the Joseon dynasty.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Did she go a step further into the past?
No, we hear someone yell cut immediately, and it turns out it's actually a film set. They were filming something. She realizes that it is 2023, Jan 1st, 12 p.m., exactly when she left. So, no, the watch didn't malfunction. She didn't go back into the Joseon dynasty. It's the same time that she pressed the watch and she went back in time. So, she's back at the exact moment. But because she interrupted the filming, she gets yelled at by that guy. Because she interrupted the filming, one of the assistants walks up to her and basically yells at her for disturbing the whole thing and that it's New Year's and she shouldn't be messing everything up for them. She looks at the call sheet and it has the date on it. So obviously she realizes it's not the Joseon dynasty. She is in 2023 and she's crying from the relief. So these guys don't want to deal with her because she's crying. When someone walks up to her and puts a jacket on her, she looks up and she realizes he's the guy who interviewed her or didn't interview her at Bond Cinema in episode 1 because they didn't have an elevator. And she has another flash of memory of her walking into work to the same place.
So she has changed the future.
Yeah, she has changed the future. And she realizes that she's working at the same place now. Coincident. So apparently she's here filming because they're all part of the movie production team, but they changed the script the day before and they didn't bother finding extras. They didn't bother hiring extras. So the actual production team is filling in as extras, including him. And that's why they're all dressed like. So the future has changed again, but significantly this time. She hasn't gotten paralyzed. She looks down. Her legs are working fine. She succeeded in changing her fate. But what about Sun Jae? She Googles his name and she's really scared to hit enter, but she finally does it and there's no news about his death. He's alive right now. She really did it. She saved him.
But there's one more chance to go back. Why would that be?
You'll find out. That's when she remembers making him promise to meet on Jan 1st, 2023 at midnight on the bridge. Remember the time capsule egg? And it's currently 5 minutes past midnight. Im-sol heads to the bridge and by the time she gets there, it's already past 1:30 and Sun Jae isn't anywhere. He isn't there on the bridge. She's worried that she's too late and then she wonders if he went to dig up the egg by himself. So she heads over to the place where they buried it, but when she gets there, Im-sol realizes that the tree and the little garden where they buried the egg is entirely gone.
It doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't exist anymore. She doesn't know what to do, but she wants to see Sun Jae. So she goes to his apartment and she's standing outside the gates. She knows where he lives. Sun Jae actually drives home right then, but neither of them notice the other. He's in the car and she's standing on the tree. It's like you're not going to look at a random person standing on the street or the driver inside a car when you're outside, right? Sun Jae goes home, takes off his jacket, rolls up his sleeves, and heads towards the bathroom. There's romantic music playing. There's someone in the bathtub covered in bubbles. Sun Jae heads in, sits by the bathtub, and it looks like he's talking to his lover. I was panicking at this point. I was like, oh no.
I almost thought there's another serial killer
No.
in the making.
Why would the serial killer be taking a bath in his bathtub?
I don't know. I don't know where it's heading.
So he reaches into the bathtub and he pulls out his best friend by the ear. Nearly had a heart attack. Apparently his friend keeps coming over to use his bathtub because he loves Sun Jae's bathtub and the view. Sun Jae tells him to get his butt out and leaves the bathroom. He walks out and there's a weird electronic beeping sound like a keypad and he realizes it's his front door. He checks his door camera and there's a girl trying to break into his apartment. Her face is covered by the hood of her jacket, but they recognize her immediately. Sanjay's now annoyed and he just opens the door she's trying to break into.
Before we go forward, I have one question. Is he still famous?
Yeah, you can't tell because I'm explaining it to you, but he is. Like, you can tell from his house and everything. Now, when she Googles him earlier to check if he died, it says everything about him, about how he's an idol and all the Wikipedia details and everything that you get when you Google someone famous. But there's no news articles about
him dying.
Just stuff about him donating and being a celebrity. So he is still an idol. So Sun Jae opens the door, but security shows up and the girl runs away. She's apparently done this before. She's been stalking him. So the stalker runs out and bumps into Im-sol and drops the sign she was holding. Like, it said something about Sun Jae. It was clear, like some kind of sign that had his name on it. And Im-sol picks it up. Im-sol tries to call out to the girl who's running away because she's like, excuse me, you dropped your thing. But the security guard shows up right then and grabs Im-sol. Im-sol and the stalker are wearing the same type of coat in the same color. And she's now holding the sign with Ryu Sun Jae's name on it. The cops show up and Im-sol ends up in the police station because they actually reported the break-in. The cops keep asking her questions, but Im-sol has no idea what's going on. Only that someone reported a home invasion and she was randomly dragged in here. So she's still reeling from the fact that she's back in 2023 and all the massive changes that have happened. And the cop asks her for her details, like, what's your name? Where do you work? And when he asks her where she works, she starts telling the cop about how she suddenly woke up and found herself working in a production company and she can finally achieve her dream of being a movie director, and how amazing it is that so much changed because of a split-second decision. That's when the cop interrupts her. Excuse me, miss. If charges are pressed against you, your statement will be very important. Imsol still has no idea what's going on, and she asks him, can you be arrested for just standing outside luxury apartments? She isn't even joking. She genuinely wants to know. The cop isn't having it. He doesn't believe her. And he says, yeah, but you weren't standing outside. You were at Ryu Sun Jae's door. Imsol instantly yells, what? Someone tried to break into Sun Jae's apartment? Is it some crazy stalker? And the cop is like, yeah, the crazy stalker is you. Because even as she's trying to defend herself, anytime Sun Jae's name or anything related to him comes up, she sounds like she's a fan. Because she's like, oh, our Sun Jae, and things like that. And it's very obvious that she's a fan. So who's going to believe that she isn't the stalker? And they're just arguing back and forth when another cop shows up and tells him Ryu Sun Jae isn't pressing any charges because he doesn't want her to get out. So now Imsol is mad that he isn't pressing charges because he should be prioritizing his safety. And the cops literally have to drag her out of the station to get rid of her. Now Sun Jae and his friend are back at his apartment, and his friend, who was taking a bath in his bathtub uninvited, tells him that he actually came by for a reason. The company's mad that Sun Jae backed out of a movie and they sent his friend over to convince him to do it. Sun Jae picks up a script, hands it to his friend and says, here, convince me to do it.
That's funny.
Yeah, the plot is even funnier. The name of the movie is Hero, which sounds good, but Sun Jae then explains the plot. It's about a mermaid who crosses a river between North Korea and South Korea and meets a North Korean officer. If you think they're gonna fall in love, think again. A zombie virus starts spreading, so the officer and the mermaid have to kill them together. The plot twist is that the North Korean officer is an alien.
And Sanjay is supposed to play the North Korean officer.
Yes. So actually it's referencing a lot of really popular K-dramas. The mermaid thing is Legend of the Blue Sea, and the North Korean officer crash landing on you. The alien thing, My Love from the Stars. I don't know which exact show the zombie virus is referring to, but even his friend has given up on the script by this point when Sanjay's assistant suddenly shows up and tells him, I know who the stalker is. So the assistant was there at the police station making the report because someone has to handle it, but Ryu Sun Jae can't go personally because he's famous and she's his stalker, so he doesn't know who it is. So the assistant is handling it and he saw Imsol's face and felt like she looked familiar, and he finally realized that she works for Bond Cinema and Imsol was the one who personally handed the script for Hero to the assistant. So they conclude that she's trying to terrorize Ryu Sun Jae for turning down the script, or maybe she's just a crazy stalker. That's their conclusion. Imsol heads home from the police station and her room looks completely different now without any of the fan merch related to Eclipse. She never had the accident, never became paralyzed, never contemplated ending her life, never had Ryu Sun Jae call her up and inspire her to live again.
He was never her idol.
Yeah, so she never became his fan in this timeline. She starts looking around for the watch, but she can't find it anywhere. Eventually, she gives up and she just tries to convince herself that it's for the best because she accomplished everything she wanted. Sun Jae's alive right now and she's no longer paralyzed. It's for the best, right? Imsol wakes up the next day and she gets ready for work. She now has an entire closet of shoes, heels even. She never got to experience that before. As she's excitedly jumping around in the heels, her grandma, who's now suffering from dementia once again, says, oh, your legs are all better now. You can walk now. Imsol tries to ask her what she meant, but it seems like she's immediately forgotten whatever just happened. And Imsol's mom shows up to distract her grandma so Imsol can leave for work. So Imsol leaves for work. Then Imsol's mom says, don't forget your keys, and hands her a car key. Imsol's extremely excited when she realizes that she owns a car and she can now drive because she definitely wasn't able to do that
She's
before.
excited about all those things she couldn't do before.
Yeah, it's really sweet. Actually, it's really cute.
And it's also simple, basic things.
Yeah, part of being human. But then after she gets in the car, it's really funny. She actually turns on all the wipers, the blinkers, everything, and she's just watching everything move around. But then she thinks, wait, maybe I can't actually drive. I've never driven before. But she convinces herself to just go for it. And it seems like she's actually able to access the memories of this version of herself whenever they're relevant, like it comes to her. And she does make it to work in one piece. She's so hyped up going into the office, greeting everyone, saying hi to her desk, trying to take selfies with her work badge when she gets called in by the boss. Her boss heard about the stalker incident and now Imsol is being blamed for Ryu Sun Jae turning down the movie script. Although he was already going to turn it down. I don't know if he told them or not, but it definitely seemed like he was already going to say no. But now Imsol has to take the blame. Imsol tries to explain her side of the story, so her boss decides to set up a meeting between Imsol and Ryu Sun Jae so Imsol can explain her and convince him to do the movie because they desperately need to cast him.
He's playing the Cupid. I mean,
The boss?
yes.
Yeah.
The boss is the
The
Cupid.
boss. She's playing Cupid, yeah. Unintentionally.
Okay, the boss is a woman.
Yeah. Imsol's waiting at the meeting place with her colleagues when she gets a phone call from her best friend from high school. She excitedly picks up the phone, and the first thing she hears is this loud screaming. Her friend says, "Nobody else is picking up right now, and I really need help." Imsol is really confused, and then her friend says, "I'm in the taxi. I'm on the way to the hospital. It's coming." What's coming? My baby! What else is coming? My water just broke. Her friend is pregnant right now. Imsol's panicking and she wants to leave, but she remembers her job. So she turns to look back towards the meeting room. She's like, what do I do? But then her friend starts screaming again, and Imsol is like, never mind, saving lives is more important, and heads out. Her friend was not in a relationship in the original timeline. That's why Imsol is surprised.
Is she dating her brother?
You'll find out. At the same time, Ryu Sun Jae has just arrived at the entrance of the meeting place. He gets out of the car and he bends down to tie his shoe by the side of the fountain. Imsol is rushing out of the entrance and she gets distracted and bumps into Ryu Sun Jae, pushing him head first into the fountain. She doesn't see him because her back was facing him when she knocked into him, and she doesn't realize that she even hit someone because she's so distracted by the screaming on the phone. She does turn around after shoving him into the fountain, and you can see on her face she's thinking, I thought I heard something. But she's looking around at her eye level. Of course nobody's there. He's on the ground, submerged in the water. Imsol hurries away to get a taxi when Sun Jae's assistant stops her, and she realizes what she did because she sees a man climbing out of a fountain. But he's facing the other way, so she never even sees his face. And he didn't see her. She has to leave, so she gives her business card saying, I'll pay for the damages. I'm sorry, but I really have to go right now. His assistant tells Sun Jae that she's the stalker because his assistant knows what she looks like. And Sun Jae is extra annoyed because they assume that she did it on purpose. There's no way she didn't see him. Maybe she called him here just to humiliate him even more. So Sun Jae tells his assistant, make sure she pays for my clothes, including my underwear. And he leaves the place without attending the meeting.
I mean, there was no point in attending the meeting. She has left.
Yeah, you're right. There is really no point. But also, I feel like even if she walked back into the meeting, after she shoved him into the fountain, obviously he's going to be like, I'm leaving. Imsol heads to the hospital with her friend, and her friend's cursing out her husband and saying she wants to kill him. And Imsol's response is, tell me who he is and I'll kill him for you. She's literally grabbing Imsol by the hair. She's in so much pain. Her friend's still just crying and screaming when Imsol's brother shows up. And he apologizes for turning off his phone during the meeting. And he heads to her friend and he's comforting her. Imsol is still processing this when she gets a flash of memory of their marriage. She goes ballistic, leaps over the bed to the other side to where her brother is and starts pulling out his hair. And she's screaming at him like, how dare you seduce my friend? And she's trying to figure out what kind of mess she created in the past that resulted in them getting married and having a baby. That's when a little kid comes up and hugs Imsol, and she realizes this is actually the older kid. This is the second child that's about to come out now. They have 2 children. After the delivery, Imsol's just waiting at the hospital when she gets a message, and it's a bunch of links to men's clothes and a message asking her to send about $7,000.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. She calls the number, but the assistant left his phone in the car, and Sanjay's waiting in the car alone. Sanjay grabs the phone, but doesn't pick up because it's some random number, right? When a text comes, Imsol's text says she wants to double check the compensation for the clothes. First, she read it as $700, and even that was unbelievable to her. But when she read it again, she realized it was $7,000. She was like, there's no way. Sanjay scrolls through the conversation, like he looks at the previous messages and realizes his assistant really did ask her even to pay for his underwear, even though he was kind of joking, but also not. So Sanjay starts typing, forget about it, let's just not ever meet each other again. And he's typing that, he hasn't sent it yet, when another message pops up. Imsol texts saying she was in such a hurry that she didn't really see him, and she doesn't believe that he was actually wearing those clothes. She tells him to send a picture of his damaged clothes as proof. And this entire time, she's being very polite, she's talking in super formal language, but she's indirectly calling him a scammer. So she's being very politely rude. Sanjay is fully provoked by now and actually grabs the clothes because they're still in the car. and starts taking pictures of everything. He lays everything out, aesthetically takes pictures of all that, and he finally reaches his underwear, which he even puts on a hanger to take a better picture of his drenched underwear. When his assistant comes back in, and he's like, "What are you doing right now?" And Sanjay kind of wakes up, snaps out of his trance, and he's like, "What am I doing right now?" And he thinks, "Never mind," and he puts down the phone. He's not sending the pictures, and he decides to just let it go. When a new article pops up about him, about his plunge into the water, and there's even pictures. Now Sanjay's fully infuriated, and he's like, "We're suing this woman." Imsol never got a response about the pictures she asked for, and she just assumes that she was right about them being a scammer and they were just trying to get more money out of her. So Imsol actually sees him everywhere she goes because he's a famous celebrity and he does a lot of commercials, and she's really glad he's alive, but she misses having him in her life. At the same time, we can see Sanjay like also looking at their old photo that they took in the photo booth, and he's kind of tearing up a little, so he clearly misses her too. He still has feelings.
Does she not watch the video where that went viral where he fell into the fountain?
Or there was just an article, not a video. So maybe she just hasn't seen it. She's been busy dealing with her friend and her unexpected husband. The next day, Imsol gets a call from the police station. Sanjay has filed a restraining order against her instead of suing her. This is her last chance. She can't go within 100 meters of. She insists to the cop that she's not a stalker. So the cop asks her, "Then why did you invite him out to apologize and then push him into a fountain?" That's when she realizes that the person she pushed was Ryu Sun Jae. She didn't know until then. She signs the restraining order, and the cop is giving her a lecture. "You should be grateful he actually took time out of his rehearsal to come meet you, and only to end up in the fountain." And she's like, "What rehearsal?" He was rehearsing for the concert. Imsol's like, "What do you mean? Wasn't the concert just a little while ago? It was supposed to be at the end of 2022 and it's now 2023. Why is he rehearsing for the concert? And there wouldn't be two so close together." She looks it up, and the concert has been postponed to today. She heads to the concert and she tries to get in. The same person who asked her for her ticket the first time asks her this time too. But she can't get in because she has no ticket. She's working with him on a movie and she's from the production company and she needs to quickly meet him. Obviously, she sounds like a crazy stalker who's just making up excuses. She isn't allowed inside. But now that she knows that the person she pushed into the fountain was Sun Jae, she realizes that she has his assistant's number. So she calls up the assistant and claims to be Sun Jae's friend and that she wants to apologize in person. The assistant doesn't believe her, but he does go out to meet her to tell her they're filing the lawsuit tomorrow because she won't stop bugging him even after signing the restraining order. She's freaking out because Sun Jae dies on the night of the concert in the original timeline. So she bullies the assistant into taking her bouquet inside and puts her card on it with her name. The assistant takes it in, but Sanjay's already getting ready to go up on stage, so nobody's in the dressing room, and the guy just dumps it on the side. Imsol waits outside, hoping he'll hear her name and come out to see her, but the concert starts. She once again stands outside listening to the concert. What a weird fate to have. No matter what timeline you're in, you will never be able to go inside to listen to this concert. Anyway, after the concert, it starts to snow, even though it wasn't in the weather forecast. Then someone bumps into her, knocking her phone to the ground, and her phone screen cracks in the same way. Everything is happening exactly as it did in the original timeline, which means he could die tonight.
Which also means that they could meet on the bridge tonight.
Which is why Imsol heads to the bridge immediately, because she also assumes the same thing, that he might come there. And she's waiting for him, but she's also desperately praying that he doesn't actually show up. Because if he shows up, that's another thing that's happened exactly as in the past. All of it leading to one inevitable outcome, his death. She waits for quite some time, but he still hasn't shown up. She's kind of disappointed, but she's also relieved because she assumes that he actually went home, which means something deviated and maybe he won't actually die. And she's about to leave when her phone rings. She picks up and she hears this deep voice say, "It's me." She slowly turns around and Sanjay is standing there in the snow. This time, she has an umbrella and he doesn't. So she walks over to him and holds the umbrella over him. And he's just watching her. She looks like she's about to cry and he asks her why she's there. And she says, "I was waiting for you." Sanjay wants to spend some time with her and asks her out for a cup of tea. And she agrees. But the assistant pops up saying everyone is asking why Sanjay isn't at the after party yet, because it's after the concert. Sanjay turns to his assistant and he hasn't even opened his mouth yet, so we have no idea what he was actually going to say. But Imsol's worried about letting him go because this is the day that he dies. Yeah, you know she's about to say some weird stuff. Although the date is different, he dies the night of the concert. And everything else is happening the exact same way that it did that night already. So before Sanjay can even respond to his assistant, Imsol grabs his coat and she yells, "Don't go." Sanjay looks confused and his assistant is still nagging him from the side. When Imsol blurts out, "Stay with me tonight. Let's spend the night together, you and me."
His dream.
His dream. Yeah, his dream's coming true. So let's rewind back to June 2022. About 6 months earlier, there's a group of people standing around a tree and an excavator moments away from knocking the tree over when a shiny black sports car shows up. Ryu Sun Jae steps out of the car with a shovel in his hand and walks up to the people standing there and says, "Do you mind if I retrieve something?" And then proceeds to dig into the ground under the tree. He unearths a giant blue egg. That's the tree that he and Imsol buried the time capsule under, the tree that was gone when Imsol returned to 2023.
Why would he go to the tree before what they decided?
Because they were about to knock it over. They were about to get rid of the tree and the surrounding area, which means the egg would get destroyed.
That's nice of him to keep tap on it.
Yeah. I was like, how did he even know what was going on with this random tree? So the night of January 1st, 2023, Sun Jae does go to the bridge. He's holding the giant egg in his hand and practicing what to say when Imsol shows up, naturally, when he gets a call from his assistant. His assistant says, "Are you trying to hatch an egg?" Sanjay looks around in a panic and he's like, "How did you know?" Apparently, a reporter called the assistant and asked what Ryu Sun Jae is filming right now and why there's an egg involved. Sanjay's been waiting there for a while now and it's already past 1 a.m. and his assistant is trying to convince him to go home if he doesn't want an impromptu meet and greet with his fans when someone posts a picture on social media. Now, people are really going to be showing up to meet Ryu Sun Jae. Sanjay leaves because he thinks she forgot or maybe she never intended to meet him again. He goes home and finally opens the time capsule. He hasn't opened it until this point because he wanted to open it together after they met. And there's a wind-up clock inside along with a letter. The letter says, "Time that flows again, that is my gift to you. Will this gift really reach you in the future? I pray that it does with my whole heart as I write this letter to you. Here's what I want to tell you in case this letter makes its way to you. Thank you, Sanjay, for being alive." That was what was in the letter to him, and he doesn't really understand.
He's expecting a confession out of her.
I don't know if he's expecting a confession. She's probably very strange, according to him. So he definitely can't possibly guess what she... The night of the concert, remember the bouquet of flowers that Imsol convinced Sanjay's assistant to take inside with her business card on it? Sanjay finished the concert and he went back to the dressing room when he noticed a random bouquet on the floor. He thinks he's hallucinating as he grabs the card, but he isn't. He can feel the card. The card really says Imsol on it. Sanjay turns to his assistant and asks, what was the name of the person from the movie production company? Was it Imsol? His assistant looks really surprised because he thought Imsol was making stuff up when she said she knew Sanjay. Sanjay just takes off running from the dressing room and he heads out of the concert hall, but he doesn't find her because she ran to the bridge as soon as it started snowing. Sanjay remembers Imsol saying that their meeting spot would be that bridge on January 1st. So he thinks maybe she's waiting for him over there. He's outside the concert venue and there's still some concert goers left outside, which means they're all fans of Eclipse and they immediately swarm him. Luckily, his assistant saw him running out like that and went to get the car. They head to the bridge and he's still nervous because it's just a hunch when he sees a little car parked on the side and a person with a yellow umbrella. He immediately knows it's her, pulls over and runs to her. But then he just stops. He's watching her as she looks around and that's when he calls. Even him saying, "It's me," in that cool tone was because he was too nervous to get anything else out.
It's already giving me the goosebumps.
Imsol holds up the umbrella over him after she sees him and she asks to spend the night together, right? So Sanjay asks her what she means and she says, "I meant it literally. Let's spend the night together." Imsol is still staring at him, waiting for a response, and he calmly nods his head and says, "Okay." Turns to his assistant, tells him, "Let everyone know I can't make it to the after party." He walks to Imsol's car, gets in the driver's seat, and then he looks over at Imsol, who's still standing there frozen. He's like, "Aren't you coming?" Imsol gets in the car and they leave, and his poor assistant is just standing there watching them drive away. Sanjay takes Imsol to a hotel, and he just walks right in. Imsol is a little freaked out, because she thinks he's taking her to a hotel room, and she's trying to probe him indirectly. He says that he prefers familiar places, and he likes the ambience, but to her, it sounds like he's saying he brings girls to places like this often. That's when Imsol sees a sign for the suite, and it's in the same direction they're heading in. She finally reaches her breaking point and stops Sanjay. She keeps trying to explain that although she asked to spend the night together, she didn't mean it in that way. Sanjay doesn't understand because she's just being vague about it. So she comes right out and tells him, "I'm the conservative type. I'm not judging you for doing that kind of thing, but it's just not me. I'm sorry for giving you the wrong idea." Sanjay tells her there's no need to be sorry and turns and walks into the bar. He was headed to the bar from the very beginning. She just misunderstood. So they're sitting inside and he's totally subtly making fun of her for getting the wrong idea. And he finally asks why she wanted to. Imsol apologizes for pushing him into the fountain and explains the misunderstanding. But Sanjay immediately waves it off. As soon as he realizes it was Imsol, he knows, yeah, you definitely aren't the stalker. He wishes she was the stalker, but she isn't. He can't take it anymore and brings up the time capsule. And Imsol is really surprised that he actually remembered. She asks him if he went to meet her on Jan 1st, but he lies and says that he was really busy, so he didn't go. She also lies and says that she didn't go Because to her, she's like, you know what? It doesn't matter if she doesn't get the time capsule back because her wish already came true. He's alive right now, which is really sweet. But they've been sitting there for only a little while when Sanjay's friend calls, the friend from high school who's also part of Eclipse. His friend asks him if he's at the Shelton Hotel right now because apparently it's all over social media that Ryu Sun Jae took a girl to the Shelton Hotel and reporters are waiting outside to get the scoop. Sanjay tells her the situation and they need to leave separately, like they need to leave immediately. Imsol looks at the time and it's about to hit midnight, but she can't leave him alone because he might die at any point. She tries to stop him, but it doesn't work and he leaves. He's being considerate to her. He doesn't want her to be harassed by the media. Imsol's ready to give up when she sees a hotel employee walking by with a bunch of umbrellas. Sanjay's already left alone and he steps out of the elevator in the parking garage when Imsol grabs him, opens the umbrella and runs away while covering both of them. There are actually reporters waiting outside and they're watching the entrance and Sanjay's car. Imsol covers them up with the umbrella and they run all the way to her car. She shoves him into the passenger seat, puts on his seatbelt for him, reclines his seat and tells him to stay down. She then drives them out of there like they're being chased. Sanjay's face is literally stunned. He looks like he's a damsel in distress who just got rescued. She drives him home and she tells him, I want to go up to your apartment. He's like, right now. He's like, yes. Why? And she can't tell him the truth. So she's like, I really need to use the bathroom. So he brings her up. But immediately after he opens the door, he sees a giant life-size cutout of a video game character, a woman in a tight, revealing outfit. So Sanjay's friend did a commercial for a game company and they sent it to him, but it somehow ended up being left at Sanjay's place. And Sanjay had no idea it was there. So he opens the door and he sees that, panics, and quickly stands in front of it to block her view. And Imsol's small enough that he completely blocks her. After he practically shoves Imsol into the bathroom, he tries to figure out where he's gonna hide this thing. He tries all kinds of weird places, like under the dining table, and finally decides he's gonna shove it on his bed. He puts it on his bed and he covers it up with his blanket, just in time to head out and overhear Imsol on the... Imsol's mom called her to say the pipes froze over at their apartment, and they're now heading over to her brother's house for the night, and Imsol should do the same. So Imsol tells her mom she isn't coming home anyway tonight. Sanjay overhears Imsol saying this. Imsol's mom gets super excited and asks if it's a guy because she's hoping Imsol is dating someone. And Imsol confirms it, yes, it's a guy, but in a I'm just humoring her fantasies of me having a boyfriend kind of way. But to Sanjay, it sounds like a confirmation of what she said earlier and that she's planning to make a move on him. Imsol comes out of the bathroom and Sanjay is reading a magazine on the couch, acting calm. The magazine is upside down. He's not reading it. He's just pretending. So now Imsol has to come up with an excuse to stay the night and watch him. It's like hardly 1 a.m. right now. She asks for a house tour and wastes a lot of time like that. She finds a random painting and starts rambling about how art can really capture a person's soul. I feel like I can spend hours staring at it. Sanjay's so annoyed. He's like, why don't I just give it to you? Then you can take it home and stare at it all you want to your heart's content. So her plan of pretending to stare at the painting all night obviously fails. Then she asks him for ramen, so he cooks for her. She takes her time eating, but how long can you really drag out a bowl of noodles? So she pretends to fall asleep at the table when he turns away for a split second. Of course, he knows she's faking, right? Nobody falls asleep that quickly. And when she opens her eyes to check if he bought the act, he's sitting right next to her.
Staring into her.
Yeah, his face is right in her face and he's just waiting for her to open her eyes. She wakes up and he decides to just ask her, are you really going to stay here tonight? He knows she didn't mean it in that way because she made it very clear at the hotel. So he doesn't understand what's going on. He keeps questioning her until she tells him the truth. She tells him that she's worried he might die tonight. She just tells him straight up. He remembers the fuss she kicked up about his shoulder before. And he's like, did you have another dream again? I don't know what's going on in your head that you constantly have dreams. He doesn't really believe her. And she tries to say vague things about how celebrities usually struggle with mental health. But he says, I don't have any mental health issues. He doesn't understand why she's suddenly so worried about him after so many years. And it hits her that it's been 15 years for him, even though it's only been a few days for her. She decides, you know what, I think I should just leave. And she gets up. But Sanjay reaches out and grabs her and he's like, no, stay. She gets so startled that she ends up spilling some of the ramen in the bowl on herself. So he gives her his shirt to change into and she goes into the bedroom to change. That's when Sanjay remembers the egg. The time capsule is sitting on his bedside table. Remember how he said that he never went to the bridge to meet her? Obviously, she'll know it's alive. She sees the egg, which is right there in plain view.
And also the cutout that he put under the bed sheets.
Well, he hasn't thought of that yet. He's more concerned about the egg right now.
Okay.
So he starts banging on the door, asking her if she's done. And as soon as she says yes, he barges in, flings the door open, and sends her out. He grabs the blanket from the bed and covers the egg with it. When Imsol suddenly walks back in to ask him something, looks down at the bed, And because he removed the blanket, yeah, the video game character cutout is on the bed and it's now exposed, which makes it even easier to misunderstand because it's on his bed. He's trying to explain it to her. He's like, it's not mine, like, I don't know. But she just says, well, you're a guy living alone. I understand. And Sanjay just screams, no, don't understand. Don't. It's not mine. Please. Obviously, she doesn't believe him, and he's still trying to convince her when Sanjay's friend suddenly shows. So Sanjay's assistant told his friend eventually that it was Imsol. And his friend ran here immediately after getting drunk so he could give Sanjay a lecture. Sanjay hides Imsol in the closet and lies to his friend that he sent Imsol home after they just had some tea and nothing happened. His friend believes him and he's about to leave when he spots that picture of the two of them from the photo booth. It's outside because Sanjay was looking at it earlier. And Sanjay's friend is really angry because he thought Sanjay had finally moved on. So why would he still have that picture? Apparently, over the years, starting from 2009, whenever Sanjay would get drunk, he would go back to Imsol's old house, grab whatever flowers he could find, and start screaming and crying for Imsol and refuse to leave.
So Imsol's hearing all of this?
Imsol's hearing all of this. She's still hiding in the closet. When his friend finds him in the playground in 2019, Sanjay says, this is the last time. I'm never coming back here again. I'm moving on. And his friend's really happy for him, right? It's been a decade already that he's still hung up on his first love. Of course, his friend doesn't like it. And also, Sanjay never dated anyone because he's so in love with Imsol, and his friend says that. And Imsol hears all of this. And Sanjay knows that Imsol's listening, and he just flips, picks up his friend, and physically dumps him in the bathtub. But when Sanjay comes back into the room, he finds Imsol holding the egg he was trying to hide earlier. Sanjay drives Imsol home, since her plan to stay over has utterly failed, still that same night, and he finally admits that he went to the bridge on Jan 1st. He drops her home and turns around to leave. When Imsol stops, he says, I was there too. I was just late. I liked you back then too. You might not care about it after all of these years, but I really did like you. I had no other way of handling it. I had no choice but to hurt you back then, but I liked you. And I always told myself if I ever saw you again, I would tell you the truth. Someone opens a door nearby and she quickly sends him away because he's a celebrity, he can't be seen. And she goes in, she gets into the lift. But Sanjay is still standing there, shocked after the confession, and he decides, I'm gonna go for it. So as she's going up to her apartment in the lift, he's running up the stairs. She reaches her apartment, unlocks the door, goes in, and she's about to close the door when Sanjay reaches the door and grabs it. He stops her from closing the door and he asks her, so you're saying you felt the same way about me back then? And she nods. What about now? And she nods. And then her neighbor opens the door and Imsol panics and quickly pulls him inside the house. And they're just staring at each other after the door closes. And then they kiss. Finally. It only took 8 episodes for their first real kiss. The one by the pool doesn't count because she was drunk and I don't know what he was doing.
But I think there was more tension with the kiss at the pool.
Yeah. This is a real kiss because they're both admitting their feelings.
Definitely.
And they're both sober.
Definitely.
They have a super passionate kiss and then the doorbell rings. The maintenance man is here to look at the frozen pipes. She tries to get him to go away, but the maintenance man is like, no, I'm not free any other time. I need to do this right now. So she decides to kick Sanjay out, but she can't have the man see Sanjay's face. So she covers Sanjay's face up with her bright yellow scarf. He's wearing all black, by the way. And she tosses him out of the house and she pretends like he's her older brother. The maintenance man is like, I have known your brother for years and they don't look remotely the same. So she says, oh, my brother got a new face entirely with plastic surgery. And so now they're officially dating. Both of them just constantly giggling to themselves all day. Like he goes to work and while he's getting his makeup done, he just starts laughing to himself. She's in meetings and trying not to smile while they're having a serious discussion about a movie.
So basically both of them are really happy.
Yeah, they're two little doofuses in love. It's adorable. So they plan to meet again that night. It's only the next day after the concert still. But Imsol turned off her phone during a meeting because they kept calling each other. And she forgot to turn it back on. So Sanjay can't reach her and he ends up going home. As they're parking the car in Sanjay's parking lot, as Sanjay and his assistant park the car, they see the stalker again. The girl that was stalking Sanjay. Originally, yeah. So Sanjay doesn't feel safe staying at home with the stalker constantly wandering around and he goes to stay at a hotel. Meanwhile, Imsol finishes work and heads to his place to pick up her car because she left it there the previous night and he dropped her home. So her car's still there. And she looks at her phone, realizes her phone has been off all day, turns it on and calls him back. But he doesn't answer the phone. So she assumes he's still working and she goes to her car. That's when she sees the stalker because her car is also parked in the same garage and that's where the stalker has been roaming. So she runs into the stalker, realizes it's a 14-year-old girl who ran away from home and takes her out to eat because she's probably been starving for ages. Sanjay calls Imsol back at this point. He was in the shower earlier. And Imsol doesn't pick up because she's busy chasing the stalker. That's when the bell rings in Sanjay's hotel room. Imsol's at the diner lecturing the kid on living a better life when she turns around and the TV's on in the background at the diner.
Don't tell me.
And the news is talking about how Ryu Sun Jae was just attacked in a hotel and the cops are currently chasing the suspect. There were signs of a struggle in the room and they found a knife with fingerprints on it. And when they ran the prints, they identified the suspect. It's the taxi driver who kidnapped Imsol. The news reports that he went to prison for a murder he committed in 2009 and was released from prison a few days ago. Remember when Imsol was at the concert and it started snowing?
Yes.
Someone knocked into her and she dropped her phone, right?
Right.
The person who knocked into her was this
The
guy.
same taxi driver.
Yeah. He even went to her house the previous night when the pipes froze and he was waiting outside the apartment all night. He saw Ryu Sun Jae drop her home, recognized Ryu Sun Jae and followed him and went to his hotel room to attack him.
Obviously, this guy wouldn't know he was famous because he was in the prison all this time.
I mean, maybe he knew him, but it's hard to find
The address of the...
that. Yeah, also he's probably surrounded by security and stuff. So Sanjay has now been stabbed and taken to the hospital. Imsol doesn't understand what's happening and why Sanjay was attacked when this man always targeted her. She was always the victim. Sanjay's critically injured and getting surgery and it isn't looking good. Imsol realizes she can turn back time one last time. She has another chance. She doesn't have the watch with her because she never became paralyzed and never became his fan in this timeline. So she looks it up, but there's no news about a watch auction online. So she heads to his apartment and she's tearing the place apart looking for the watch. She doesn't find the watch, but Sanjay's friend comes over and she asks him about it. And honestly, she just seems like she's running from her grief and distracting herself so she doesn't have to face reality. Although Sanjay's friend blames her for the current situation, he eventually takes pity on her and tells her that Sanjay lost that watch a long time ago. Nobody knows where it is. Imsol just breaks down. She doesn't know what to do. So she goes home and her mom's watching the news and the reporting about Sanjay's attack and how Sanjay witnessed this man's crime in May 2009, leading to his arrest. So this man came back after he was released to take revenge on Ryu Sun Jae for sending him to prison. Imsol realizes that something is off. She asks her mom, and her mom says Imsol was abducted in 2009 after she started college. What we know is that she was kidnapped in both the original timeline and before she returned to 2023 on September 1st, 2008, and yes, when she was in school. But if you remember, she returned to 2023 the moment she was rescued. So the 19-year-old Imsol, who opened her eyes at that moment, woke up and had no memory of what happened. So she couldn't give testimony, couldn't explain what happened to her. She couldn't even point out the suspect. And Ryu Sun Jae never saw that man's face when he drove away this time, because Sanjay was looking at Imsol. And Imsol has no memory of the abduction, even in the original timeline. But Ryu Sun Jae saw the man's face after he hit Imsol with the car. And that's how he was arrested back then. But this time, the victim doesn't remember and the witness didn't witness, so he was never arrested in 2008, giving him a chance to show up again in 2009.
Okay, it's a little confusing, but I get it.
Because Imsol stopped it from happening, the accident.
It happened once again.
It happened once again because he was never arrested, because she returned to 2023 too soon before she could give testimony. So nobody knows that anything happened to her. Imsol reaches out to the detective who was in charge of the case back then and asks for the case file from 2009. She reads Sanjay's witness statement and it says, on May 10th, 2009, Sanjay was walking home when he saw a bag lying on the ground and textbooks scattered everywhere. Imsol's name was on the books, so he started looking for her when he heard a scream coming from an abandoned building nearby. He ran in and saw Imsol running away from the kidnapper, and she's running towards Ryu Sun Jae. That's when the kidnapper showed up, and Sanjay and the kidnapper fight. The man even tossed Sanjay through a glass window. Ouch. He managed to fight the kidnapper off, and eventually the cops show up because he called the cops earlier before running into the building. And Imsol's rescued and the guy goes to prison. Now, Imsol realizes that everyone was referring to this abduction whenever the topic came up in the past few days. And she just never realized. She assumed that...
It was the 1st September.
Yeah, she assumes that everyone knew about the September 1st, 2008 thing. Because even if she didn't remember, there would be evidence. After Sanjay saved her, the Imsol of that time refused to see him again. Because seeing Sanjay reminded her of the kidnapping. And every time she would see him, she would feel scared. So she would just ignore Sanjay and treat him like he didn't even exist. This is the moment that Imsol realizes that Sanjay died because of her. He never killed himself. Even in the original timeline, when they show Sanjay standing on the balcony, there's someone at the door. We hear the doorbell ring. But in the beginning, it seems like he ignored it and jumped. But later, they show the same scene again, and when the bell rings, he actually turns towards the door. They never show what happened after, but clearly he opened the door and got attacked in the same way. But the first time they thought
It was
because
he
there
fell
were,
into water.
yeah, and also because there was no like knife wound or anything. Imsol digs through the case files that she got from the detective, and she's flipping out because it should have been her. She should have been the one who died, and every time Sun Jae dies for saving her, she doesn't know what to do. Sanjay's still unconscious. They have no idea if he's gonna wake up. When she's still going through the evidence, the case file, when she sees one of the evidence photos, and Sanjay's watch is in the picture, the watch that she couldn't find earlier, the watch that was lost. She calls up the detective, and he tells her that the belongings are returned to the victim after the investigation. So that must mean the watch was returned to her at some point. She turns the house upside down looking for the watch when her grandma shows up wearing it. Again, her grandma. And her grandma says, "Here, I kept it safe for you," even though she doesn't even recognize him. She goes to see Sanjay one last time at the hospital. She promises him that she'll fix this. And when the clock strikes 12, she presses the button on the watch. Imsol opens her eyes to find herself on top of a giant horse statue. And there's a banner on the building across from her, welcoming freshmen to Yonsei University. So it's now 2009, and she's in college. Luckily, she didn't actually have to take the entrance. Can you imagine? She probably wouldn't have even gotten into college. She's pretty high up in the air, and there's a crowd of people on the ground just laughing at her because she got drunk and ended up on top of a horse statue. That's when she slips and falls off the statue. Everyone's freaking out, trying to figure out what to do, and she thinks she's gonna die. But Sanjay catches her, naturally. She gets really embarrassed and runs away from him. Imsol's friend tells her that Sanjay also came to the same college as them, and he did end up getting into the physical education department like he planned to. Obviously, this is the result of her meddling, because he never went to college original, because he signed with an agent. Imsol decides she's going to continue avoiding him the way the Imsol of this timeline was already doing, because associating with her won't do him any good, because he'll end up dying just from saving her. It's now March 17th, 2009, and she has 2 months before the second abduction, so she decides to go to the cops. She tells them she lost her memory because of the trauma earlier, but she managed to recall everything now, and she gives them all of the details that she saw in the case file in the future about her abduction, all the places where they can find evidence, and that guy's name, and every little thing, even his job. She wants to get the man caught before anything happens to her, so he never has a run-in with Ryu Sun Jae, and Sun Jae won't get murdered by him. She buys a bunch of self-defense items to keep herself safe, and when she's walking home, she sees a man intimidating a kid in an alley. She turns into Wonder Woman instantly, takes out her brand new baton to get justice, and goes running when she realizes it's Kim Tae-sung, and he was actually just helping a kid get his money back. So they go to a cafe to catch up, and she realizes he actually graduated high school, so his fate has changed too. He's doing his usual flirting routine, but he immediately figures out from her reactions that it's not the 20-year-old Imsol, and it's the granny. Apparently, he also now has a website where he sells clothes. Basically, he's the model, and he models those clothes, and people buy them. He became a successful small online business owner in 2009. That's so impressive.
She's changed the fate of her, and
Everybody, yeah. The next day, they have freshman trip. Like they have an overnight trip somewhere, and all the freshmen go together, along with some of the seniors. And Sanjay's on the same train car as her. Imsol's desperately trying to avoid being seen by him, and the entire train is filled with a bunch of 20-year-olds just goofing off. Now, one of the students tells everyone about an urban legend about the freshman trip. Apparently, couples who kiss at the freshman trip end up getting married. He then gives examples because obviously nobody believes him. They're like, "What are you talking about?" He says quite a few couples who kissed, like they're seniors who've been on this freshman trip before, have ended up getting married. One of the couples got married, but they got divorced a year later, and the man ended up marrying another classmate. Apparently, that man kissed his girlfriend during the trip, but got drunk and accidentally kissed the other classmate he eventually married.
that's funny.
2 guys also had to kiss as a penalty for a drinking game, and 10 years later, those 2 guys went abroad somewhere to get their marriage license. So takeaway is, a kiss guarantees marriage, so don't get drunk and kiss just anybody. Everyone is making plans to get with their crushes, and Imsol's friend is no different. Imsol's friend asks her about Imsol's brother and his girlfriend. Apparently, the girlfriend deleted all of Imsol's brother's pictures on her social media, so Imsol's friend is trying to casually ask if they broke up. Imsol just knows what she's hinting at because Imsol knows the future, and she just doesn't say anything to her. They finally make it to the location, and it looks like a mountain lodge in the middle of the woods. Imsol thought she could finally get away from Sanjay because each department will stay together, and they're in different departments. He's in the physical education department, and she's in the media department. But the place is so big that everyone can stay together, like the guys in one room and girls in another room. And guess who recommended the place?
Sun Jae.
No, Imsol's friend. Because Imsol's brother is on the trip too. He's in the same college as them, and he's also in the physical education department. And she wanted to spend more time with him. Sun Jae finally sees Imsol, realizes she's on the trip too, although he didn't see her on the train because she was hiding too much. Imsol runs away again, and Sun Jae definitely notices. Until this point, the 20-year-old Imsol of this timeline was just treating him like air and like he was non-existent, and she would have zero reaction to him. But as soon as our main character has gone back in time, she's been acting strange and actively avoiding him and panicking. Of course, he knows that something's weird. So this trip has started, everyone's drinking and having fun, and it's evening. Imsol takes this opportunity to sneak into the room and get her bag so she can leave this place. But right as she gets her bag out of this giant pile, everyone from the media department comes into the room. So she immediately pretends to be drunk and passed out. They all start playing drinking games. They're sitting in a giant circle on the floor, and Imsol is right outside the circle. She's on the other side of the room from the door, so while they're playing drinking games, she slowly tries to crawl like a caterpillar to the door so she can leave. She's inching across the floor. As she's inching her way across the room, she's almost there. She stretches her arm out to reach the door when one of the seniors in charge notices. This guy's really annoying. He's one of those guys who keeps forcing everyone to drink. So Imsol has to join the game now because he noticed. But instead of just drinking if you lose, now there's an additional penalty, which is you have to go next door to the PE department and dance. Yeah, that's where Sun Jae is. Now, Imsol's like, I'm definitely not running into him again. So she's determined not to lose. But the senior keeps targeting her during the game, and eventually she does end up losing. So the senior drags all of the kids from the media department over to the room where the PE department is and makes Imsol dance. She looks around, doesn't see Ryu Sun Jae, heaves a sigh of relief, and proceeds to do a slightly silly dance. The senior is laughing the hardest, making fun of her the most. I really dislike that man. That's when Ryu Sun Jae suddenly pops up. He was actually lying down on the other side of the room, and the people sitting in front of him were blocking him from view, so he was there. And he sees Imsol dancing. Imsol sees him, and she's danced enough anyway, so she just leaves the room. She goes back to the media department's room, and her senior follows her all the way back, and he's nagging her about finishing the penalty, and Imsol has reached her limit. She was being really polite and just bearing with it until that moment, even though she found that guy really annoying. But now he's just crossed the line. So she screams at him about how he's acting like a boomer, and if this was a few years later, he'd be all over social media and get cancelled immediately. She's like, what are you going to do if someone gets alcohol poisoning? Then she actually drinks the penalty drink that was waiting there, smashes him with the container. It's like made out of paper mache or something, so she didn't actually hit him. And she takes her bag and leaves. Everyone's outside at this point having a barbecue, and Sun Jae's there too. So she tries to sneak away and heads into the woods. She wants to go home. But there's a sign warning people about wild boars in the area, which she didn't notice when she walked into the woods. Now, Imsol's in the woods, and it's too dark to find the road, and she's kind of lost. So she pulls out her phone, opens it, and realizes, wait, this isn't a smartphone. So there's no Google Maps. And she's kind of lost. And there's wild boars calling out nearby, and Imsol is really scared. She hears footsteps behind her and starts running, but she trips and realizes she can't get away fast enough. So she opens her bag, pulls out her taser, turns around, and tases Sun Jae.
Of course, it has to be Sun Jae.
It has to be Sun Jae. He followed her because he saw her heading into the area of the woods with the sign. He knows that she didn't realize it was dangerous, so he followed her because he was worried. So she tries to call out for help because he's now on the ground, hurt, but there's no service and nobody can hear her when Sun Jae suddenly gets up and grabs her shoulder. She gets so startled that she steps into a trap and it pulls her up and she ends up hanging upside down from a tree. If you're wondering how he's back up so soon after being tased, it's because Imsol forgot to put batteries in her taser. He just fell earlier when she tased him, and also because she punched him in the gut with her taser. Sun Jae tells her that he knows she's been avoiding him and it's ridiculous for her to take it this far. And he's kind of angry at her, and he yells at her, do you really hate me that much? You know what, fine, I'll just ignore you from now on. And he takes her back to the lodge. And Imsol spends the next few hours sitting in a corner by herself and just drinking a lot of alcohol. Now, Sun Jae has a run-in with Imsol's brother when he returns. And Imsol's brother is threatening him to stay away from Imsol. He's trying to do the protective older brother thing. And he's also giving Sun Jae advice on how to win a girl. And he just won't stop talking about how amazing he is with women when he remembers to call his girlfriend, but his call won't get through again. So he borrows Sun Jae's phone, and the call does get through, and she picks up. He still hasn't figured it out when his girlfriend just tells him, I was avoiding your calls. I like someone else. Imsol's brother gets dead drunk, and he's still hugging Sun Jae's phone and sobbing about his love and talking to his girlfriend. She hung up a long time ago, but he thinks he's talking to her. And Sun Jae is just watching this train wreck happen when her brother suddenly gets up and decides, I'm gonna go find my ex right now, right this instant. And he runs out of the room. Sun Jae follows him, but he was a little too slow. By the time he got outside, her brother was already missing. So now he's just standing there wondering what to do.
That's when Imsol's friend comes.
No. Well, yes, Imsol's friend does follow Imsol's brother out. But right now, we care more about Sun Jae because he's about to do something interesting. So Sun Jae's standing outside and he's just looking around when this random guy dressed in a suit comes outside and starts loudly proclaiming his love for one of the girls in the media department. He asks the girl to come out so he can confess to her, and he's screaming his love for her when he feels his stomach rumbling. He needs to use the bathroom. And there's one outside, but the door doesn't have a handle, so it doesn't stay closed. Sun Jae's still outside at this point, so this guy sees Sun Jae and asks him to hold the door closed for him while he does his business. Sun Jae takes pity on the guy and goes up to hold the door. When he realizes that this guy is the same senior who was making fun of Imsol earlier, the one who forced her to do the penalty.
He's gonna take some revenge on him.
Yeah, the guy just changed his clothes to do his grand public confession. That's why Sun Jae didn't recognize him immediately. But now that Sun Jae recognized him, he pauses for a split second and his hand is on the door. And he just removes his hand, turns around and walks away without looking back. The door naturally swings open because it doesn't stay closed. And this guy's still inside squatting when the girl he confessed to comes out along with everybody else in the media department to listen to his confession, only to find him in the toilet with the door open. So Sun Jae gets revenge for Imsol. Meanwhile, Imsol's friend, she followed Imsol's brother earlier, remember? And he wandered off into the forest. And he got caught in the same exact type of trap that Imsol got caught in earlier. I don't know what kind of fate these siblings have. And he's currently hanging upside down when Imsol's friend finds him. He's still drunk, still talking about his girlfriend. And she gets really pissed. She's like, stop bringing up this woman's name. She's done with you. She left you. Look at me now. And he just won't stop saying her name. And she kisses him. And not just any kiss. He's wearing a red beanie. And the beanie is pulled over his mouth because she wanted to stop him from...
It's a Spider-Man kiss.
Yeah, it's the Spider-Man kiss with him upside down. So now they're definitely getting married, right?
The fate has been sealed.
There's nothing Imsol can do about it. So Sun Jae walks into the forest, away from the mess he created, and he comes across this little platform, and Imsol's on it. She was drinking inside earlier, but I guess when everyone came out, she also stumbled out and ended up in the woods, because she's extremely drunk right now. He isn't sure if he should go up to her, because she clearly doesn't want to see him. But it looks like she's going to fall off the platform, so he runs up and helps her. She starts crying and yelling at him, "Why are you following me? I was so mean to you. Why are you still worried about me? I told you to be more selfish. Why did you have to let that happen to you? Why did you have to be so stupid?" He doesn't understand everything she's saying, but he does understand that she cares about him. Obviously, because she's referring to how he got himself killed, and he doesn't know that. But then she says, just pretend you don't see me. Don't worry about me. No matter what happens to me, just leave me alone. Just begging. So the trip is over. They all head home, and Imsol gets a call from the detective on her case. The shed the killer had all his stuff in, the one that she pointed the cops to, the one that he took her to when she was first kidnapped, it burned down with all of the evidence inside. But Imsol knows from the future case file that the shed was intact and that's where they got all the evidence from, which helped to convict him. So the killer realized the cops were onto him this time and burned it down. So now the evidence that convicts him in the future doesn't really exist anymore. Imsol realizes that he might come looking for her, so she packs up her stuff and runs out of the house because if she stays at home, Sun Jae's right across the street. The killer might run into Sun Jae, especially since it's happened so many times already. It's probably going to happen again. But when she steps out of the gate, Sun Jae is waiting there for her. He asks her, "How did you know that song? I've never played it for anyone except for my friend." And that's when they show us, remember when he saw her in the woods and he was helping her? He actually carried her back to the lodge because she was dead drunk, was blacked out. And when he was carrying her back, she started singing. And she's singing Sonagi, the song that Sun Jae wrote about Imsol. But in this timeline, right now, he only just started writing the song. And he only let his friend take a peek at it a few days ago. So nobody knows about the song. And she's singing it. He asks her where she heard the song, but she just says, "I'll change it this time, before I go back." So he asks, "Where are you going?" "The future. Back to my time." So he's now standing on her doorstep and he wants answers. He sees her wearing a backpack that looks stuffed. She looks like she's running away from home. And he asks her where she's going, but she doesn't really know what to say. And then Sun Jae says, "Are you going back to your time?" And Sol's jaw drops, and then he asks, "Are you really from the future?" And
Oh my god, he's figured it out.
yeah, kind of. That's where we're gonna end it today. So watch part 4 to find out how she's gonna handle this situation and what Sun Jae knows and what he's figured out.